Ryu's single punch to the bitch's face was enough to make her fall onto her knees. The angel couldn't believe that a trashy human being had just hit her. As she turns around to face Ryu, she sees that he had disappeared from her sights in an instant. But as she wonders how he disappeared so fast, our boy reappears behind her, with murder in his eyes. But instead of another punch, Ryu decided to grab the angel's wings, surprising her as she screamed at our boy, asking him what he was doing. But he ignores her words, as she begs him to stop. Ryu simply continues to pull out her wing, with a "I don't give a shit" look on his face. A ripping sound is heard as Ryu had finally pulled out the angel's wing from her back, unleashing a massive flow of golden blood everywhere. Looking down at her now, Ryu tells her to not be so dramatic. As he holds her down to the ground by stepping on her back, Ryu continues to pull out the other wing that Angel had while she screams in pain. Once he rips it out the final wing, he tells the angel that she won't be able to run anymore. Looking close at the angel who is trembling, he asks her if it hurts. She stutters her words as she replies that of course it hurts, you dumbass. But Ryu knew that she would have been the one asking him that question while laughing with that stupid laugh of hers. The angel tries to deny his accusation, but Ryu knew that she was going to kill him with a dagger hidden in her wing, and so he searched the wing, and found the hidden dagger. Which immediately silences the angel. As he threw her wings away, he knew it, but the angel kept on denying it, telling Ryu that she never had such thoughts, but our boy knew the truth, since he could read Brielle's face. Brielle was stunned to learn that Ryu actually knew her name, but he tells her that it was none of her business as he summons his inventory to pull out his own dagger. As he held it in his hand, Brielle started to panic over what he was planning to do with it. She threatens to blow his head up with a flick of her finger if he comes near her. But Ryu smiles, revealing to her that he knew that she didn't have that skill anymore. Her face was filled with anger as she warned Ryu that her fellow angels wouldn't forgive him for this. But he was still calm, as he knew that her fellow angels didn't care whether she died or not, since angels were selfish creatures. Anyways, Ryu decided that it was time for her to die, so she started to spew all kinds of nonsense, telling Ryu that killing her wouldn't bring any benefits and that he won't be able to return home if he does. But Ryu knew that everything she was saying was a lie, since they automatically returned home. Leaving her confused on how he knew all that. She even begs him for a chance, as she was willing to tell him all the information he wanted, but Ryu declines. He reveals to Brielle that he already got all the information he needed by torturing her. The way the angels live, the goals they had, and that he knew that they were also pawns in this guide and that their only duty is to be a guide. Hearing all this at once, Brielle was legit confused. And so, Ryu finally plunges his dagger deep into her chest, letting out a massive flow of golden blood once again. As Brielle lay dead on the ground, the system informed him that he had defeated an angel. He was also the first player to kill an angel, allowing him to obtain the title of first ever angel slayer. He had also obtained the angel's blood and the rune of slaughter as rewards for being the first to kill an angel. The system notifies him that the obtained rune will be automatically sealed to the user's body. The rewards Ryu just got are given to the first player to kill an angel. His title doubles his stats when fighting against a divine type. Ryu learned about these rewards ever since his 13th time around, since these are rewards meant for only one person. The rune of slaughter increases all his stats by 1% whenever he kills an opponent, but its effects only last until the round is over. Each of the rewards were comparable to a unique item. Ryu was smiling because he knew that the angels would be shocked once they found out that he already has a rune. And the potion he held in his hand was the biggest reason for killing an angel. It was the angel's blood, allowing for the player's class to change to the Grim Reaper. All players can have a class once they are level 10. There are 30 different jobs, and the way to change them is simple. First is to look for an item that will let you swap classes. Usually, it is naturally earned during hunts or through simple conditions. But there are exceptions. There are class change items that only one person can get in the right environment once they have fulfilled the conditions. Of course, the classes offered by this thing are on a different level. Bonus stats, class change, runes, skill options, and others. Everything is flawless, but even having such a powerful class, Ryu still returned back in time without even beating the final round. So he decided to try and get first place in all the zones. He was now staring at a window, telling him to choose one of the rewards. Looking at the list of rewards, Ryu's goal right now was to reach level 10 so that he could change classes. So he chooses the first option, the triple experience buff, which will be activated once he presses the second round. As he looked at Brielle fading into the light, he knew that this was his last time and that he couldn't escape anywhere. So he needed to get stronger no matter what. The first round ended with over 900 million survivors in all areas, with the second round starting on the 1st of February. Yeongmin and the other players that survived had finally been returned back to the real world. Looking around at the others, Yeongmin wonders if he had just passed out since their heads felt like they were going to explode. He thought that he was in a dream. Looking at his phone, he sees that the time was 5:20, the same amount of time he spent in his dream. Yeongmin's friends started to wake up as well, with their heads throbbing with pain and their bodies sore. One of them turns to ask Yeongmin if he had passed out, so he tells him that everyone around them did the same. They started to wonder if they were in a dream, but as Yeongmin continued to look around, he could see the reactions of everyone else, making him realize that they weren't in a dream. As they finally realized that they had to go to the second round, Yeongmin noticed another one of his friends lying still on the ground. So he kicks him to wake him up, but he doesn't move an inch. One of his friends decided to turn him around instead, revealing a pale face. Placing his head above his mouth and nose, Yeongmin's friend's hands started to tremble. He tells the others that he wasn't breathing and that he couldn't feel a pulse either. They all soon realized that one of them was actually dead because he didn't survive the game. They started to look around once again, realizing that those who weren't moving were all just dead bodies right now. Yeongmin's friends started to vomit and panic as they realized that the next round was going to be like this. But Yeongmin was different. He was trembling with excitement as he found all of this to be freaking awesome. The reason he found this awesome was because it meant that everyone was the same now, regardless of whether they were born rich or not, they all had to survive the same way now. So he no longer has any need to grieve about how unfair life is. Looking at his friends all panicking, he tells them to calm down since all they needed to do was survive. He even tells them that they weren't the only ones in this situation, making it fair, but his friends could only think of him as a lunatic. The bald guy complains to Yeongmin that he still had lots of stuff he wanted to do, but Yeongmin's attention was on something else. He tells his friend that he couldn't see his favorite shuttle anymore. Thinking about it before, he remembered Ryu being in the crowd before passing out, but then he smiles at the thought that Ryu must have died in the first round since there was no way a loser like him could have survived. But then another player wearing armor walks by, catching Yeongmin's attention. Looking at the player with his armor on, Yeongmin suddenly realizes something. Without hesitation, he calls out for his status window, which actually opens in the real world. He couldn't believe that it actually works. His friends didn't believe that it would work until they called out their own status windows. Soon enough, the other players around them started to call out for their own status window, realizing that they could use it in real life. Yeongmin went on to pick up a stone to test a theory. With the stone in his head, he easily smashes it to bits by simply gripping it tightly. His face was stunned as he saw the stone turned into dust, but a wicked smile grew across his face as he realized how awesome this is. The news soon reported that this morning, about 10,000 citizens lost consciousness at the bell-tolling ceremony in Korea. There was video footage of what went on. The reporter told the audience that an unidentified woman that looked like an angel had appeared above the ceremony, and talked to the citizens below. Moments later, as the angel pointed her hand at a man in the crowd, his head exploded, killing the man instantly on the spot as everyone panicked and ran. Soon after, the angel stretches out her hand to the remaining citizens, causing around 10,000 of them to suddenly collapse onto the ground. Police reports reveal that only those aged from 15 to 29 years old had collapsed. And that this event was not only happening in Korea but across 128 other countries. The comments below in the video were a mix of trolls and fear as citizens couldn't believe that this was real. Ryu was watching the news on his phone, realizing that everything was starting. But he knew that this was only the beginning, as the news reported that half of the collapsed citizens had been declared virtually dead after experiencing a heart attack on sight. There was even a report of a celebrity dying as well. This is the first time in history that 11% of the nation's people have died. Other than the vast reports of death coming in, Ryu knew that the actual problem was something else. As he watches the news on a TV screen, the reporter reveals that the survivors were now called players and how many of them were still being counted. The fact is that the players' abilities have been carried into the real world. There weren't any people with high stats right now, so its effect isn't that significant, but as the players started to level up, they will soon become transcendental beings. This will result in the birth of literal human weapons, that no state-of-the-art weapon or even military can overpower. But Ryu wasn't going to stand by and let all of this happen, because if he does, then the Earth will be destroyed before round 20. He knew of one solution, which is to control the players with overwhelming force. He had to use a different method from his previous life as he needed 4 other players to open the boss room on the 20th round. Ryu already had a few candidates in mind, and had come up with ways to get them on board as allies, but as he walked home, he knew that right now wasn't the time to act yet. Because he has something more important to do. As Ryu enters his house, he notices something on the kitchen top. He could see an empty cup of noodles. And so, he opens the door of a room, revealing another person sleeping on the floor. He smiles while looking at his brother who was in such a deep sleep that he didn't even notice that someone had come in. This little kid is Wani, Ryu's younger brother who is in his 3rd year in middle school. Their little family had changed a lot after their parents passed away in a car accident. The biggest change was that Ryu became Wani's one and only guardian in this world. Looking at his cute younger brother, Ryu notices a bandage on his hand, covering a heavily bruised injury. He didn't say anything and simply turned on the lights, waking up Wani who was in a daze. He tells Wani that it was already morning. Wani looked at his phone and told his brother that it was only 6. Big brother simply snatches his blanket away from the little man, telling him to change clothes since they had to go somewhere. As Ryu handed him some new clothes to change into, Wani was still in a daze, so Ryu told him to listen closely. He warns him that right now the whole world is a mess, so they don't have time to sleep peacefully anymore. As the two brothers walk down the empty streets of Korea, Wani turns to look at Big Bro, wondering why he has such a serious look on his face. Ryu then asks him if he knew what was going on with the world right now. Wani obviously didn't as he questions Ryu about what happened while he was asleep. Ryu simply tells him to look at the online trending searches. Taking out his phone, Wani reads it and wonders what it was all about, how an angel took people into the other world. Ryu corrects him, saying that it was their souls that were taken. Wani then realizes that Ryu must have been one of them. Ryu tells him that he went and made it back alive after killing 100 goblins. Wani was concerned about his health and immediately went to check if Ryu had any injuries. But he simply tells him not to worry, which angers the little bro, causing a flashback to start. It was during their parents' funeral. While Wani was crying like a baby, Ryu stood tall and firm without shedding a single tear. Looking at his big bro's back, Wani knew that Ryu had more inner strength than anyone, enough to fill the void left by their mother and father. But he knew deep down that inner strength and killing 100 goblins were two different things. Plus to Wani, Ryu wasn't that strong physically. Big Bro suddenly smiles and tells Wani that he knew what he was thinking about. He reveals that the other world has a stats system like games, so his real-world physical condition didn't matter. Ryu continues to assure Wani that once he sees him later, he wouldn't think about him in the same way anymore. But Wani doesn't believe Ryu at all, forcing him to tell him where they were going as he wouldn't take another step. Wani was serious about knowing where they were going first. Ryu's eyes were drawn to the bandage that was covering the wound that Wani had, so he simply tells him a name, Bang Tae-gyu. Ryu reveals to him that they were going to his hideout, the guy who bullies him.
Thanks for watching the latest part from the voice of Manhwa. Subscribe for more content and don't forget to comment below what you want to see in the future. Like and share for more.